The Haunting of Swain's Fancy by Brenda Seabrook. Chapter 6. Taylor yelped and tried to jump out of the cot. It collapsed into a heap with her in the middle. She thought Abel Swain was holding her down as she fought to clear off the bed covers. "Help!" she cried, rolling onto the floor. Lights came on down the hall. Footsteps hurried to the door. It opened. Dad and Sylvania and Peter came in. "What's happening in here?" Dad asked. Nicole turned on her light. "What's that?" she said in a sleepy voice, but her eyes were bright with glee. "I saw it," Abel said. "The face. It was staring in the window at me. About to come in. I tried to get out of bed and something wouldn't let me." Taylor untangled herself from the wreck of the cot as Dad examined it. "The cot collapsed because the right leg broke. I'll see about repairing it tomorrow. Meanwhile, you'll have to share Nicole's bed, Taylor," Sylvania said. Nicole gave Taylor a fierce look but didn't say anything as she moved over to the side by the lamp. Taylor didn't want to sleep with Nicole any more than Nicole wanted her to. She got in on the other side and stayed as close to the edge as she could. Peter danced around, jabbing the air with his cast. "Where's the ghost? I want to see the ghost." "All right, everyone, settle down," Dad said. "Let's get some sleep." "Peter, go back to bed," Sylvania said. "Aw, they get to have all the fun." The lights were out and the house was quiet again. Nicole was soon breathing deeply. Asleep already? Taylor scratched the itch on her left hand and kept her eyes open, watching for the face. But the window remained black. Something was in the room. Taylor glimpsed movement. The woman glided into the center of the room. Taylor lay paralyzed, watching it. It wasn't Sylvania. This woman wore a long dress with a bustle on the back. She seemed to glow with a greenish light around her. She wrung her hands in anguish as she paced the room, touching things that Taylor couldn't see. Things that maybe were no longer there. Her ghostly hands mimed opening cupboards, pulling out drawers. Taylor put her hand over her mouth. She wouldn't scream again. She would not yell. She wouldn't even whimper. "Please go away," she whispered silently to the woman, afraid to close her eyes. The woman dissolved. There was no doubt left in Taylor's mind. The woman was a ghost. But whose? Not Abel Swain's. Taylor lay rigid until the room began to lighten before dawn. And then she slept. "The cot is a dead loss," Dad said upon closer examination the next morning. Taylor felt uncomfortable about breaking the cot, even though it was old. "You two will have to share Nicole's bed," Sylvania said. Nicole's eyes narrowed in fury. "It's all your fault," she seemed to say on her way to the wisteria tent to meet Cody. Taylor was miserable. Mom had emailed that she would be thrilled to spend her summer in the house, like Swain's fancy. That Taylor had always loved old houses, all that history, part of America. She would make it her summer project to find out all she could about it. She was a lucky girl, etc., etc. Peter offered her his Tarzan books, and she read for a while in a chair beside him in the hammock. But she was too miserable to concentrate, and she couldn't stop her thoughts from spraying onto the story of Abel Swain. "Peter, why is this house called Swain's Fancy?" "Dunno." He turned a page without looking up. Taylor decided to ask Dad. Maybe he would know. She went to the house and down the cellar stairs to his office. He wasn't there, but Sylvania was in hers. "Sylvania, why is this house called Swain's Fancy?" She was on her computer, a pencil stuck in her hair, fabric swatches dangling from her mouth as her fingers flew over keys. She said something that sounded like deadline. Swain's preferred it, this land fancied it. Taylor knew what deadline meant. Sylvania's column had to be in by a certain time for it to go to the printer. She went back upstairs, ate a banana from the fruit bowl in the dining room, and mulled over Sylvania's words. Preferred, this land, fancied. Finally, she decided that Abel Swain must have preferred this piece of land. He fancied it. That must be what fancy meant then, instead of what it usually means now, which is decorated. She went out on the front porch and looked at the carving over the door. Swain's Fancy, 1754. Poor Abel, getting his head cut off by a train, if that was what really happened to him. Dad drove up in his Jeep. "Hi, Taylor. I had to go to the post office. What are you doing out here by yourself?" "Peter's reading in the hammock. Nicole is off with Cody. Sylvania's on deadline." Like that, is it?" Taylor nodded. Dad seemed to understand about Nicole. "Dad, did Abel Swain really get his head cut off by a train?" "No, of course not. Why would you think that?" "Cody said he did." "Cody's wrong. Look at the date over the door. What does it say?" 1754. "And when were trains invented?" "I don't know. Sometime in the 1800s. I'll give you a clue. The first railroads in this country ran in 1828 in Baltimore. So what Cody said wouldn't and couldn't be true." "Why not?" "You tell me." Taylor thought for a moment. The house was built years before the railroad. Abel Swain would probably have been at least 20 years old in 1754 when he built the house. Maybe even older. He would have been at least 94 when the first railroad ran. So why couldn't he have his head cut off? Dad smiled. "Good thinking." But there were no railroads around here for a long time. Swain was at least 20 when he came here in 1745 and built the cabin that he lived in until he built this house. If he was born in 1725, then he could have lived to be 103. Taylor said, "and taken a ride on the first railroad, fallen out, and gotten his head cut off." Dad laughed. "Yeah, I suppose it's possible, but Swain had already had a wife and children when he came here. I think he was older than 20. It's more likely that Cody was telling a tale." He went into the house, leaving Taylor to think about Abel Swain and Cody's story, and why he had told it to her. Nicole and Cody wouldn't let her join them on their daily games. Why had they let her play last night? Then she thought of another question. Why hadn't Nicole ever seen the face? Something was going on, and she bet Nicole was behind it. She'd been excited, not scared the first time the face had appeared. That wasn't normal. She should have been scared, too. Taylor decided to look for clues. She started with Nicole's room, being very careful not to muss the clothes folded in drawers or leave anything out of place. Everything seemed to be just what it should be. She checked under the bed and found dust bunnies, dental floss, a box of old clothes, bits of dance costumes, wigs, a pair of wings. Taylor thought it would be fun to put on plays in these, but she shoved the box back under the bed and blew the dust bunnies with it. She left the dental floss, too. She wasn't going to clean up Nicole's mess. The stairs to the attic were in the hall behind a door that creaked as she opened it. Taylor ignored the noise and went up. The fifth step was odd, steeper than the others. Sylvania hadn't had time to tackle the attic. It was musty, dusty, cobwebby, just the kind of attic Taylor liked. Some boxes had not yet been unpacked from the move, but some of the older, dusty boxes and things had probably been left in the house by the people who lived here before. She found a stack of Life magazines from 1940s and 50s in a pile on the floor. Boxes, leftover debris from workmen, a broken vase, some boxes labeled in Sylvania's handwriting were stacked near the window on the end. More cobwebs. Taylor reached out to break a long line of cobwebs, but the web held. She looked down at the end of it on her hand. It was strong, like dental floss. She pulled it. It was dental floss. She followed it to a window at the front of the house, and there on the floor, a face, a white, ghostly face, craterous, staring up at her. Dusty footprints surrounded the face, which appeared now to be cardboard painted with some kind of luminous paint. Nicole. She was responsible for nearly scaring Taylor to death, But how had she managed to make the face float outside the window when she was in bed the whole time? And the attic window was just above the one where Taylor had slept in the cot. Nicole must have come up here and dropped the face out the window, run the dental floss downstairs to her bed. It wouldn't have been noticeable on the floor at night or any other time unless somebody was looking under the bed. She probably tied the end to her bedpost and gave it slack to make the face appear and pulled it taut to make it disappear. When people came into the room, she made it disappear, then pulled it back up in the attic in the morning where nobody would see it. That was why she didn't want Taylor in her bed. Her movements would have jiggled the bed, and Taylor would have known that she was doing it. Taylor had to admit it was a clever trick, but why did Nicole hate her so much that she would play such a mean trick like that? What had she ever done to Nicole? She picked up the face and went downstairs to find Nicole and have it out with her. As Taylor neared the wisteria tent, she decided to give Nicole a scare. Stepping carefully to avoid making noise, she approached the tent. She threw the end of the dental floss over a limb and lowered the face through a slot in the vines. Woo! Woo! She made a high-pitched, scary noise, the kind she thought a ghost would make. Eee! Ah! Ow! What's that? Nicole and Cody jumped out of the vine tent. Their faces wore scared looks. Taylor laughed. "What do you think you're doing?" Taylor demanded. "Just returning Abel's head to you," Taylor said. Nicole glared at her, but for once was speechless. "I know it was you doing those things," Taylor said. Nicole and Cody looked at her, then broke into laughter. "You're so funny. Your face was as white as Abel Swain's," Nicole said between giggles. It hadn't been funny to Taylor. She was furious, but she didn't want them to know. It was really childish. If I'd known you were into such baby stuff, I would have guessed it was you earlier. I know how you did the face, but how did you do the woman?" Nicole stopped laughing. "What woman?" "The one that comes after Abel, probably his wife or a girlfriend. She's probably looking for his head." "There's no woman. You're making that up," Nicole scowled. "No, I'm not." But Nicole refused to listen. She and Cody ran off into the woods, to another of their secret places, probably. She didn't like getting caught at her tricks, but Taylor would be on guard now. They would have a hard time tricking her again. Chapter 7. "Will you stop that scratching?" Nicole snapped as she turned the page of her book. "I can't. It itches too much." Taylor looked up from the letter she was writing to her best friend Annette at home. Annette was going to the beach with both of her parents for summer vacation. She wasn't stuck in an old house with a stepsister who hated her. Lucky Annette. Taylor wrote about Nicole and her mean tricks. "Put something on it. Didn't Mom give you something? I'm covered with the stuff, but it only helps for about a nanosecond. I can't stand all that scratching." Nicole got out of bed and went to talk to her mother. Sylvania came back with her. Taylor scratched vigorously. "Taylor, don't scratch so much," Sylvania said. "You'll make it worse. I have to. It itches. It couldn't be any worse than it is." "All right, Nicole, I see your point. Taylor, you can sleep in the other bedroom." Sylvania took sheets out of a chest in the other bedroom, and Taylor helped her to make the bed. Dad brought in a lamp and plugged it in. "It's not period, but I know you'll want to read before you sleep." "Thanks, Dad." He and Sylvania went downstairs. Taylor was alone in the museum room. The antique bed was high up off the floor with 4 tall posts that soared above her. A tall chest stood against one wall, another with drawers against the wall opposite, and a trunk with a rocking chair on the wall between them. A dark painting of fruit hung over the chest with drawers. The room was gloomy and plain despite the bowl of fragrant potpourri on the stand beside her bed. Taylor was glad she hadn't lived in those days. She liked her own cheerful poppy red, grass green, and pear yellow room at home in Washington. Her instant her instant communication with the computer, her little TV, her rows of books in the shelves, her collection of stuffed animals. But this room was better than sleeping in a bed with someone who hated her. Nicole couldn't try to scare Taylor now. She settled back on the pillows and opened her book, The Once and Future King. Taylor read a long time, losing herself in the adventures of a boy called Wart. It helped her forget the itching. Suddenly, the door opened and Nicole rushed in, breathing breathless and scared-looking. "Can I sleep in here?" "No." Taylor didn't have to think twice about her reply. What was she scheming about now? "You had me moved out of your room. Do you want this one too?" "Please, look, I know it was a dirty trick about Abel in the head." Nicole stopped and gulped. "I'm sorry, really sorry. I'll make it up to you. Please just let me sleep here." "No. This is another of your tricks." "It's not. I swear it's not. I cross my heart." Nicole crossed her heart. Taylor was sure Nicole was capable of crossing her heart and then doing any kind of dirty trick. But she did seem scared. "Why should I let you? You don't want me here. You've made that plain, and I don't want you in my room either. So go away." But Nicole wouldn't go. "I don't blame you for feeling that way. It was mean. I won't do it anymore. Please." "No. I'll be nice from now on, I promise." Taylor didn't answer. "Cross my heart?" "No." "I'll put it in writing." She grabbed Taylor's box of stationery and pen and scribbled furiously. "There. This proves I'll be nice." Taylor read the note twice, searching for tricks. "I'm sorry I tried to scare Taylor with the Abel Swain ghost head, and I promise not to do it again and to be nice. Signed, Nicole Elizabeth Thorson." "Okay, you can stay here, just for tonight. But if it's another one of your tricks, I'm telling." "It's not. Really, it's not. And if it is, you can show the note to Mom, and I'll get in trouble." This would be interesting, to see how she would play a trick in here. Nicole would be alert to catch her. Or Taylor would be alert to catch her. Nicole got in bed and Taylor turned off the light. "Why do you want to sleep in here?" she asked in the dark. "I don't want to talk about it," Nicole said. Taylor kept her eyes open, straining to see whatever was going to happen in the dark room, to be ready for Nicole's trick, whatever it was. Nicole was quiet, but it didn't sound like she was asleep. How long would she wait? Years seemed to pass. Taylor's eyes grew heavy. It was hard to keep them open. Maybe Nicole wasn't going to try anything. Maybe she could forget about tricks and just go to sleep. The room grew lighter. Taylor's eyes sprang open. It couldn't be morning already. She hadn't slept yet. A woman glided into the dark room. Through the door, the closed door. She stood in the center of the room, of the floor, with greenish light around her, wringing her hands. And Taylor lay still, gritting her teeth. She was determined not to give Nicole the satisfaction of knowing that she had seen the manufactured ghost. Suddenly, a hand gripped her arm. Taylor wanted to yell, but refused to let Nicole know she was scared. The woman took a step towards the bed, and then she faded into darkness in her room. Taylor lay rigid. Beside her, Nicole let out a breath. "Did you see that?" "What?" It was hard to be brave, but she couldn't let Nicole get the best of her again. "That woman." "No, I didn't see any woman. Where was she?" "There, in the middle of the room." This had gone on long enough. Taylor turned on the lamp. "I don't know how you did it. You didn't know I was going to be sleeping in here. Or did you?" Nicole looked terrified. Her teeth were still chattering. "What are you talking about?" This was too much. Nobody's teeth chattered like that. "Maybe you planned to tell Sylvania I made too much noise. You knew she would move me in here so you could get the whole trick up ahead of time just in case. How did you do it?" "I didn't do anything." Nicole finally gained control of her teeth. "That's a nice touch," the chattering teeth. "But you can't fool me. It wasn't a trick. Look, I admitted Cody and I rigged up the face, but we had nothing to do with this. Honest." Taylor didn't entirely believe her. Nicole was a good actor. Then if she isn't a trick, who is she? "I don't want to say it." "Well, Taylor waited. "We can talk about it in daylight. I don't want to go to sleep in a haunted in here." "You could go back to your room." "No, I saw her in there too." "Me too," Taylor said. Nicole's surprise was genuine. "You saw her in there?" "Both nights. I was scared. I thought she was one of your tricks." "I don't think she'll come back," Taylor said. "She didn't before." "She came in here after I saw her in my room," Nicole said. "I only saw her once each night. Maybe she won't come back. She didn't the other times." Taylor turned off the light. She planned to stay awake all night. Her eyes closed. The room was as cold as a refrigerator. Arctic wind blew over her, but where was it coming from? She tried to pull the covers up, but she only had a sheet. The wind blew harder. She was freezing, but she refused to open her eyes. And then the air settled back into its normal June temperature. Chapter 8. Nicole acted as if nothing happened the night before, and she hadn't begged to spend the night in Taylor's room, and that they hadn't seen a ghost together. She poured milk over her cereal, ignoring Taylor. When Taylor suggested a game of Monopoly, she looked at the refrigerator behind Taylor's head and said, "Only babies play games like that." And Taylor had thought she would be different today. She was the same old stuck-up Nicole. She didn't want to be friends with Taylor or sisters. Dad was busy in his office, Sylvania in hers. Taylor sighed as she thought about the long day with nothing to do. She sent her mother an email without mentioning her problems with Nicole or what had happened last night. She just told her about sleeping in a bedroom with furniture from the 18th century. "I'm glad I live in this century," she typed. Mom couldn't do anything while she was in New Mexico. She would just say they had to work into it themselves, that they were going to be stepsisters forever, so the sooner the better. The day dragged by. Taylor recolored a big magenta T over the C in Nicole's name on Peter's cast. He didn't even stop reading to watch. Now all the letters in Taylor's name were there, even if they were intersected by Nicole's. Peter offered her another Tarzan book, but she felt restless. She wanted to do something active. She wandered out into the summer house and stared at the minnows in the pond. A frog croaked happily somewhere. A tiny breeze rippled the water, and for an instant she felt a kind of urgency. But for what? Taylor sat on the edge of the bridge and dabbled her toes in the pond water, sending the minnows darting. She looked up at the house. The face wasn't there today. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces began to fit together. The face she had seen on the first day and the other times hadn't been Nicole or any other living person, or a reflection or a trick of the light. That face was a ghost. Maybe the same ghost that glided into the bedrooms at night. The woman with the greenish aura who seemed to be looking for something. Why was that ghost searching? And for what? These questions were more pieces of the puzzle. Taylor didn't know how to fit them together, but she knew that somehow they were important. Peter ate lunch with her on the porch. Dad had gone to Winchester again. Sylvania had finished her column and now was concentrating on July days, which were getting closer. "Why do Nicole and Cody do that every day?" she asked Peter as he cracked a hard-boiled egg and peeled it with one hand. He shrugged. "I don't know. I think they make up plays or something." "Two people plays? Guess so." He bit half of the egg at once. "Seems to be plays would be better with more people." Taylor thought of the costume pieces under Nicole's bed. "Yeah, this is a long summer. Bummer summer." He crammed the rest of the egg in. "Are there any malls or anything around here?" "No." "Not unless you go to Winchester or Martinsburg. How far's that?" "About 15 miles to each." His mouth was eggy all the way around. "There's nowhere else to go?" "Maybe the library." Taylor jumped up. "Let's go then." She could look for books to use in writing about the house for Sylvania. "You can walk if you want to," Sylvania said when they asked her. "I'm too busy to drive you right now, but I'll pick you up in a little while on my way to the store. Peter, you can help Taylor with the research on the house." "No, Ma, it's at least 2 miles." Not even one. You can wait until I go, or you can walk. I prefer that you walk. You could use some exercise, Peter. You broke your arm, not your leg. It'll be good for you, she said. They walked along the road, past black and white cows lying under the few trees in the pastures. Closer to Burneytown, they passed houses, some of them old-looking with fancy wooden trim, though none looked as old as Swain's fancy. They didn't see any children, and Peter said he didn't know any from town around except for Cody. You'll meet kids when you go to school, Taylor said. Yeah. Peter didn't seem happy about it. They'll all be new, he said. Well, when you're a kid, almost everybody is new. Guess so. As Taylor thought about it, she realized that although her dad was her same old dad, there was also a new stepdad to Peter and Nicole. She was the same old Taylor, but a new stepsister. It was odd. Like finding rooms you don't know were there in your house. The library was an old wooden house with lacy trim painted blue slates. Dark red, navy, and cream. The books were all in different rooms, one for children's books, one for adults, another for nonfiction. All of the books looked old. Taylor found some Jeeves and Wooster books. Peter picked a pile of paperback Zane Grey westerns. You have any books on the history of Burneytown? Taylor asked Mrs. Mills, the librarian, a short lady with curly gray hair. Not on the town itself, but we do have one about the county, she said. She went to the nonfiction room and brought back a thick old book that she handed to Taylor. Is this what you're looking for? Taylor read the title, History of Warfield County. It didn't look like anyone had checked it out for a long time. Probably one of those dry, old, boring history books, but she had asked for it, so she took it, and Miss Mills checked it out on Peter's card. Are you interested in history? She asked Taylor. Taylor nodded and explained about the project for July days. This whole area in the eastern panhandle was constantly in turmoil during the Civil War, Miss Mills said. Martinsburg, West Virginia, changed hands between Union and Confederate Army controlled 10 times in Winchester, Virginia. 76 times. Wow, Peter said. Why did they go back and forth so much? Taylor asked. Union needed the railway in Martinsburg, and it was the gateway to Shadow Valley with all of its farm produce, and also the gateway to the coal mines in the rest of what is now West Virginia, and they needed it for troop movements into the valley. Mr. Lincoln refused to let the Confederacy hold on to this part of the state. She sounded like she knew the president personally. Miss Mills was just warming up on the subject. The Confederates weren't able to hold the area long, so they tore up rail lines and set fire to the equipment when they had to retreat. They dragged locomotives south deep into the Shenandoah Valley from Martinsburg to Strattsburg, Virginia, a distance about 50 miles. Colonel John Mosby's Rangers raided the Panhandle when it was under Union control. Mosby himself was called the Gray Ghost because he could slip in and out right under the Union Army's nose. He spent the night right at my great-grandfather's house. Taylor thought Miss Mills would have talked all night if Sylvania hadn't come to pick them up. She drove to the grocery in Burneytown, and they helped her fill a cart and carry the bags to the car. They persuaded her to cook fried chicken and potato salad for supper, but they had to promise to peel the potatoes and the eggs. Deal, Peter said. I'll crack the eggs and Taylor can peel them. No fair, Taylor said. Peter cradled his arms in the sling. You wouldn't make a wounded boy work, would you? Peter laughed. You weren't having any trouble at lunch. I'll do the potatoes, you peel the eggs. Nicole had to play with Taylor and Peter after supper if she wanted to play outside the house. Taylor was one of the group now that she knew Cody and was friends with Peter. The game was again hide and seek, but this time Peter insisted on counting out and Nicole was at first. And Taylor flattened herself behind some ferns near the woods, hidden unless somebody tripped over her. She sneaked back into base. Cody got caught and had to be it. This was more fun than the rigged game the night before. This was the way the game was supposed to be played. At bedtime, Taylor slathered herself in the new itch cream Sylvania had gotten for her and went alone to the antique room. Nicole had believed the night before when she begged to come in Taylor's room, but now Taylor was beginning to have doubts. Maybe Nicole had staged the whole thing the way she had staged Abel Swain's head in the plays she and Cody put on. Maybe it was part of a complicated plan that would be revealed tonight. What would she do? Taylor didn't trust Nicole's promise of no more tricks. When Taylor was ready for bed to the hall, the door slowly opened. "Taylor, can I sleep in here?" Nicole whispered. "What nerve." "No." Nicole looked surprised. "Why not? You let me last night." "You can't sleep in here and ignore me all day." "Why not?" "Because I won't let you. That's why not. Now go back to your room before I call Dad and show him the note." "You think he'll side with you? You think you're so smart? Daddy's little girl." Taylor lifted her chin. "Yes, I'm Daddy's little girl, and Daddy's big girl, too. Just because you get to have him all the time doesn't change anything with him and me. So go back to your room, you snuck-up snob." "Baby," Nicole stuck her tongue out. "I'm not the baby," Taylor said, but Nicole slammed the door to give the final word in the argument. Taylor got into bed and opened her book. She was seething. Who did Nicole think she was anyways? The house settled down, quiet except for the noise of crickets and frogs outside. Taylor soon forgot her anger as she read about the antics of Jeeves and Wooster. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw the door slowly open. It was Nicole again. "I'm sorry," she said. "You're not a baby. I get mad sometimes because you have a dad and I get to see him and I don't." "What do you mean you don't?" "I don't get to see my dad." "Not ever?" "Not for a year. He's in Pakistan or somewhere like that. He's always traveling. That's why he and Mom got divorced. He's always gone, and she wanted him to stay home. He sends us a postcard every now and then." Nicole looked so miserable that Taylor felt sorry for her for some reason. Taylor was also on guard. Nicole could be acting a part. She would check with Peter tomorrow. A year was a long time. She'd only seen her dad twice since Christmas, twice in 6 months, but compared to Nicole, that was a lot. "I don't know why you want to sleep in here. You don't want me in your room," Taylor said. Nicole whispered something. "What?" "I saw her again." "Who? You know who." "Her, just now." "She'll probably come in here next like she did before. She won't hurt you. She doesn't do anything but wring her hands and look in furniture that's not there anymore." "I know, but it's scarier when I'm alone." That was true. Even if she didn't like Nicole, Taylor didn't want to face the woman alone either. "Okay, just for tonight." Nicole got in bed and closed her eyes. Taylor went back to her book. She laughed loud at Muriel and Bertie. "What's so funny?" Nicole asked. She read the title of the book. "Oh, Jeeves and Wooster. I've seen them on TV. I didn't know they were in books. Lots of books." "Why did you call me a snob?" "Because you don't ever play with me." "You don't seem to like me either," Nicole said. "You didn't like me first, and I was mad because you got to see my dad all the time, and I only got to see him a little bit since he bought this house." "Steve's nice. You're lucky he's your dad. I wish he were my dad." "He's my dad, but he's your stepdad, and you get to live with him. That's the next best thing," Taylor said. And she realized it was. It must be awful for Nicole and Peter not to have their dad. "We can share him," she added, "and Jeeves and Wooster." She handed Nicole another of the wood and house books. They read until Taylor's eyes began to droop. "Ready to turn out the light?" "Okay." She turned the switch and the room was instantly black. Taylor closed her eyes, but in a few minutes she knew that someone else was in the room. Someone besides Nicole. Against her will, she opened her eyes and saw the woman with a bustle standing as before in the middle of the room. This time she didn't disappear so quickly. She walked around as she had in Nicole's room, searching, her hands open, her opening cupboards that weren't there, opening drawers that only she could see. Beside her, Nicole was also rigid, watching. The woman glided towards the bed. She didn't know it was there. She was going to walk through it. Taylor dived over the side when Nicole right beside her. They hit the floor with a thump. From under the bed, they could see the bottom of the ghost's skirt. It reached the bed, and then it stopped.